Today we have a story of revenge involving somebody's house and their retirement. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, I locked my Aldi cart to another person's cart inside the store. I was at Aldi and there was a woman shopping by herself with a rather full cart. My first encounter, she had her cart sideways, blocking most of the aisle, standing against one side and looking at food on the other side. I make my way past her, and of course, as soon as I'm close, she steps forward to get the food she was looking at. I politely do the, "Oops, excuse me," and wait to pass. Not even bothered yet. Whatever, it happens all the time. Second time, I'm pushing my cart along the outside and she's about to pull in front of me. I can see it. She half goes without looking but hesitates, and I stop because I think she's about to, but then she doesn't, so I start to go, and then she hesitates again and pushes right in front of me. I roll my eyes. The third time I see her, she parks it totally sideways and blocking the whole aisle between those island freezers in the wall. She leaves it unattended and goes to get something else. So in the middle of grumbling and reaching to move it, I instead put her latch into my cart, leave my 3 to 4 items, take my quarter back, and scurry off to get a new cart. I don't think she had another quarter, as I saw her trying to push both awkwardly at the same time in different directions to the checkout. These are the kinds of experiences that I'm afraid of experiencing. If there's one thing I hate to be, it's to have to be the person that has to speak up and say, "Okay, you need to let me through." Like, it just kills me to have to be that guy. Flowerchild077 wrote, "When people are blocking aisles when we go food shopping, my mom yells, 'beep beep' or 'honk' LMAO. It's embarrassing but hilarious at the same time." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. Our next story is Unintentional Petty Revenge. My nephew, mid-20s, had a migraine that was so bad he asked me to take him to the emergency room. After we checked in, he was laying with his head on my lap, feet on the floor. Security guard comes over and tells him that he can't lay down. My nephew told him that if he sits up, he will throw up. There isn't anyone else in the waiting room, so maybe bend the rules? Nope. You have to sit. My nephew sits up and immediately throws up all over the floor. He got called in right after, so I don't know who had to clean it up. I just feel bad for the nephew here. I know people personally who have told me the act of throwing up is just about the worst feeling they ever have. So to be kind of scolded and told, "No, you have to sit up and you have to throw up," it just doesn't make much sense. SoftCookie99 wrote, "So sorry for your nephew, but that was the perfect response to someone being uncaring." This next story is, "Don't tell me I should smile more." I, 27 female, work night security in a hospital. This particular night started off annoying. I made another post about what happened before this shift that made me so annoyed, and after getting to my post, I was chatting with my coworker, venting a little. I'll admit I can have resting witch face at times, especially when I don't have the energy to mask at that time. As we were standing there watching everyone, this guy leaving tells me something like, "Smile more, it could be worse," with a way more chipper attitude than I could handle at that moment. Now, I can make myself cry, but not at the drop of a dime. But I can easily make my eyes visibly well up with tears. So I made my eyes well up, made it look like I was going to cry, and responded, "My baby boy was just diagnosed with leukemia," and turned away, covering my face. I couldn't see his reaction, but heard him awkwardly mumble a sorry before leaving. As soon as the guy was out of my sight, my coworker and I started laughing. I didn't have any kids. Don't tell people they should smile. It's annoying as heck, and personally, I think it's rude. Mind your own business. I'm right there with OP. I think I have RBF2, or like severe resting depressive face. I remember back in high school just sitting around chilling during gym class during a free time, and somebody walking up to me and actually saying to me, "Are you okay? You look like you need a hug." Meanwhile, it's just another average Tuesday for me. I was probably busy just thinking about getting home and playing Civ 5 or something. Spice Weasel OG wrote, "This is probably why I went into engineering. Dealing with people is not one of my stronger traits, more so when their primary concern is that the position of my lips on my face is unpleasant to them. You're still here, so no, it really couldn't." This next story is, "Neighbouring street left me passive-aggressive note implying damage to road surface and snapping my windscreen wiper linkage for parking for half a day. A local campsite has mystically moved its address on Google Maps across the railway a few meters to the end of their road. I'm in the UK. I parked on a residential street with one of those homemade private road signs that has no legal weighing on for half a day as my usual space on some village common land was occupied. I wasn't blocking anyone or parked in a way that was obstructive to the pavement or the road. When putting a sign on my vehicle, they must have been ticked off because the wiper linkage had been snapped. The printed note left on it implied that I was not legally allowed to park there and that residents pay for maintenance, etc. A local campsite has mysteriously changed locations by a few meters across a railway track at the end of their street, and the RVs/motorhomes have started arriving for Easter and are going up there and having to turn around. Oh dear. It's a great revenge because you know this is going to make those people livid. They can't just live their lives, they're gonna have to be upset about this stuff. Coder Joe 1 said, "Oh snap, too bad your quest for vengeance will inconvenience all those campers." OP responded, "Yeah, but campers around here are known for their rudeness and refusal to give way on the road, etc. Scraping others' vehicles. I'm sure it'll be corrected soon enough." Our next story is the one time I was rude to a bartender. This took place around 15 years ago. I was out with a bunch of colleagues on AW and we were at a pub in the city we all lived in. Two of us went up to the counter, is this the correct word? English is not my first language, where the bartender was on the phone. We get it, they do need to take phone calls from time to time. It could have been someone who wanted to make a reservation or something like that, and it wasn't a busy time of the evening. However, instead of signaling to us that she would be with us in a minute, like make eye contact and hold up a finger, she gave us a look as if we were disturbing her, and then demonstratively turned her back against us and kept talking. Since no one else was there to serve customers, we had to wait for her to finish the phone call. When she did, she went over to us, rolled her eyes at us, and with an annoyed tone said, "Yes?" My coworker ordered a beer and got that. I asked for a Smirnoff Ice. She scoffed and said, this time in a very condescending tone, "We don't sell that kind of soda-inspired beverage here, you know." I said, "Alright, I'll just have a Coke then." Once again, she rolled her eyes and gave me a Coke, that she kind of slammed on the counter a bit for me, so I would have to lean over or take a step to the side to reach. I decided to take a small revenge on her rudeness. I usually don't carry cash, but this time I actually did, and it was all coins. So instead of paying with my card as I usually would, I used the coins instead. I held them in my hand, but just as she reached for them, once again with an eye roll, I slightly twitched my hand so the coins fell in different directions over the counter. Oh, the look she gave me. My coworker applauded me, and we left the place as soon as we finished our drinks. I don't really know why this person is bartending there because very clearly they're not enjoying their job, like especially if it's not their bar. Honestly, do the owner a favor, shut it down for the day, and let them find somebody that is actually going to get them repeat business. Ophis wrote, "I was a bartender for 17 years, and if I ever acted that poorly, I would be ashamed of myself." Well done on the perfectly petty consequence. This next story is, coworker was pushing all his workload onto me for months. Her and me were made to be a team on a 6-month project. Every day, she would leave for 3 to 5 hours. Whenever I asked her about where she disappeared to, and every day I only heard nonsense. The manager needed help, the new guys need help, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. 2 months into the project, I was fed up. I could go to HR, but I had a better idea. I'll take a few personal days. Let's see how she does. You see, every day you have to submit the amount of work that you got done with, and without me there for 4 days, she couldn't finish on time. She even called me to ask when I was going to be back. It's not the same without you here. When I went back to work, she was back at it, same pattern. So now I went to HR. Now I have a new project partner, and it's someone who doesn't slack off. I just think OP did the right thing here, and it was probably going to end up going in that kind of a direction regardless after some amount of time. Caterpillar number 6795 wrote, "I worked with someone like this years ago. He always told me he couldn't help on the project because he was too busy on a second project, but he was telling that person the same. My petty revenge was that when he wanted to present it to senior leaders at a Fortune 100 company and the managers wanted him to as well, I let him. Why was it petty? Because after the presentation and during questions, he answered everything wrong, and I politely corrected him. He had no clue what he was talking about, and it became clear, but the manager liked him and he got a promotion. In the end, the manager was the only one willing to work on projects with him, and I've moved on to much sweeter pastures." This next story is My Dog the Genius. I teach all the dogs I train to pee and poo on command. I always say that it's so you can tell your dog to pee or poo quickly if it's raining, or if you need to take them inside somewhere and you don't want them to have an accident. Today I was walking Maul and he was sniffing at some grass in front of a block of flats. Let me stress, everyone uses this grass for their dogs, and I for one always clean up after my dog. So Maul is sniffing and minding his own business when some guy in one of the flats starts pounding on his window and yelling at me to get the freak off his grass. Sir, you live in a flat. This is not your grass. If he had politely asked me not to let my dog on the grass, I would have apologized and never used the grass again. But he was a jerk, so I did the only thing I could do. I looked the guy in the eye and said, "Maul, poo." And he did. Maul didn't even hesitate. He immediately squatted and pooed. I bagged it up, of course, and resisted the urge to throw it at the guy's window. You guys, I think this might be my proudest dog training moment ever. Good boy, Maul. ETA, a lot of people have asked how I trained Maul to poo on command, so here's what I did. It takes time, but take the dog out and say, "Go poo," over and over and over. You will look like a crazy person, but pay no mind. When they do poo, make a big deal out of it and say, "Good poo." Maybe give a few treats. Do the same for pee. In a few weeks, they should have it. Maul and I will be moving back to Los Angeles from the UK in September, and I'll be taking my dog training business with me. If anyone's in LA looking for training, just send me a DM, and I'll let you know when I'm back in town. I mean, it does sound like pretty darn good dog training. I'm just worried that if the dog is incentivized not to go without being told to, that it might not be the best, because is the dog gonna just be like holding it until like there's a chance for them to get rewarded? Rev Chewy wrote, "Not the same thing, kind of the reverse, but this reminds me of the time I was walking our Husky German Shepherd mix. We were circling around the neighborhood park when the sprinklers kicked on. The dog jumped about 3 feet in the air and instantly pooed. I had heard the phrase, scared the crap out of someone, but I always thought it was purely figurative. This is the only time I've seen it happen in person." Our next story is, "You want petty? How's this?" I work in a small office block of 5 floors with a basement car park and only a single lift working at present instead of 2. I'm on the 2nd floor, and a few desks away from me works an older guy who I'll call Richard Head. Richard Head is a character, but also just plain offensive and sarcastic at times, and has been a bit of a jerk to me a few times when I've asked for his help, which has really ticked me off and insulted my intelligence. I don't like him. I try not to talk to him. I don't care what he did on the weekend or what he thinks about anything. We all work with someone like this. I'm sure you can relate. So the other morning I arrive at work and realize that Richard Head is not in. Wonderful, I think to myself. No jokes, no music, no Richard Head perhaps for the day. Excellent. I left my earbuds in my car, so I go down to the basement car park to get them. I notice Richard Head has just arrived late, has pulled his car into his spot on the back wall, and is getting out of his car as I get back into the lift with my earbuds. I don't hold the lift for him. He's too far away. I don't think he even noticed me. As I get out on my floor, the second, I have a moment of inspiration and run my hand down all the buttons on the lift and get out, sending the lift to every floor above me before it would go back down to the basement to collect Richard Head. I bought myself a few extra minutes of being Richard Head free. It's so petty it's laughable, but I enjoyed it immensely, and I got away with it. If you work with somebody in person that you just can't person to person get along with, I mean, even if you get like 3 extra minutes, that's like 3 extra minutes of nirvana. Contribution Alone 113 wrote, "Oh wow, look at all the beautiful Christmas colors." Our next story is, Benchy's sister-in-law tries to break us up, reveals her miserable nature instead. My partner's sister has never been nice to me, despite me actively trying to get to know her, be kind, and build a positive relationship. She has never welcomed me into his life. Only been mean and rude towards me for years, and harshly rejected any attempts of friendship or working things out, so I gave up, quietly cut her out of my life, and remained civil. She avoids me anyway, which works out great. They share a friend group. Their friends think she's so nice. She repeatedly told me she has no issue with me. Their friends told me several times she has no issue with me. My partner spoke to her about it, but told me she never said a bad word about me, other than we'd never be close because we're 2 different people. She bullies my partner too and often belittles him. Since they come from an abusive home life where that was their everyday, he didn't realize how badly she was treating him and would get defensive when I brought it up that I didn't like how she treated either of us. People outside the situation told me that it's really her issue and has nothing to do with me. Unfortunately, as much as I wanted to protect my partner, I knew his sister was his closest relationship, as they were each other's anchors in their abusive family life. I never wanted to separate or come between them, but had to protect my own safety. He had to get there on his own. For the record, my partner has always been very good to me, needed leeway to learn how to do better, needed to learn what to look for, given me lots of safety, protects me, and I love him deeply. My revenge with his sister is kill her with kindness and make myself untouchable. I give her no excuses to pick a fight with me. I built up positive relationships with all their friends' kids, and their friends' pets. If she complains about me, she's getting rebuffed and looks bad. I set boundaries on how I want to be treated and refuse to be her whipping post. She complained that she has to walk on eggshells with me as a result. Most importantly, I built up such a healthy relationship with my partner over the last 5 years. He's no longer taking her abuses, which was the last straw. Eventually, her own romantic relationship of 10 years completely blew up last year, ending horribly. She recently revealed she doesn't like me. I knew it the entire time. It felt so vindicating after years of being gaslit and my gut feeling being right. She recently told my partner she has problems with me, but refuses to ever say what they are or work them out with me. She more recently told my partner she's done trying to help him and doesn't want to be around him anymore. She tried to break us up, which failed. She's now trying to turn their friends against him. I can tell she envies my partner, used her long-term romantic relationship as the one thing she felt she had over him, and deep down doesn't want him to be happy. I know she hates herself, is deeply insecure, and is in a lot of pain, but refuses to self-reflect and look inward and makes excuses to justify a whole lot of awful behavior. I did a lot to overcome the pain she put me through. I feel bad for her and wish her healing, but for now, I'm personally happy to have her out of my life. A mantra I live by is, be so positive that negative people don't want to be around you. And I love when the trash takes itself out. Kindness, happiness, and sincerity can be very effective weapons. Yeah, I still pettily enjoy watching miserable people implode on themselves and fail hard at hurting others. Don't treat me or my loved ones badly. OP is a great friend or relative to have. OP's the kind of person that you don't want to mistreat them. You want to be on the right side because they are fighting for you. They're willing to stick up for you. DebX3 wrote, "Preach. I also have a sister-in-law who never accepted me as part of the family even after a decade and would blatantly pass over me in public gatherings. However, I'm on great terms with everyone else in the family, including her children, and I prefer that over being in her good graces any day." This next story is creating school schedule headaches for a cheating ex. Back in college, my freshman year girlfriend cheated on me. At first, I didn't think much of revenge and resigned myself to be quietly ticked about the situation. Then I discovered her EDU account was still logged into my laptop, and it also happened to be right before our registration for next semester's classes. I waited for her to register for classes and for a few days to pass and classes to fill up. I then deleted her class schedule and the email confirming the drops. I checked daily to see if she had noticed, and after nearly a week, I saw a brand new schedule with 4 Friday classes and 2 classes at 7:30 a.m. during the week. The breakup was long enough past that I can't imagine she thought it could be me, and for 4 months she was moderately inconvenienced. A petty win that I still love. I think the important thing here is there might have been a lot of people who would try to sabotage their whole semester. OP just made it annoying, just a huge chore on top of what classes already would be. Bob K2 wrote, "She had no class." This next story is freak with my job and I'll freak with your marriage. I already know I'm the jerk for this, but this is what happened. My manager is an Indian woman and was constantly making passive-aggressive comments about my ethnicity, Afghan. I've worked at Subway for around 6 months and neither did I or any of my coworkers get along with her. She was the biggest micromanager I've ever met and would make up random rules, then would yell at us in front of the customers if we made a mistake. I know she made up these rules because when I would follow them, the owner of the store would question what I was doing and tell me I'm not supposed to do that. She would also make racist remarks about me and my coworkers. My friend was explaining how she had to slaughter a goat for her religion, then she laughed in her face and said, "That's disgusting." And on my first day, I told her I was from Afghanistan. She said, "You're a fake Afghan, you look Chinese." A couple of months fast forward, and I had to work in the morning with just her. I was at the front taking care of orders when there was a huge rush of people. She was in the back eating food when she wasn't even on break, so as I'm taking care of all of these orders, I like to frequently change my gloves after handling pork to accommodate any religious beliefs. These gloves would pile up, and yeah, there were some crumbs on the table. However, when the rush was done, she then decided to come out and started scolding me for making a mess. I explained to her that there was a rush and I didn't have time to start cleaning in the middle of orders. She still insisted that I could have took out the trash and wiped the counters when there was a line of people waiting. Then started pointing out everything I did wrong, following with a, "You're like a baby, you don't know how to do anything." I was so done with her, so I left right then and there. I told my friend what happened, she also worked with me, and we decided to make a fake Instagram account to catfish her husband. Yes, I know this was wrong, but we were pretty bored teenagers. His Instagram was pretty easy to find, so we messaged him. He instantly responded back and kept flirting with us, wanting to meet up the next day. We sent the screenshot to our manager, but she blocked us, so I guess she wanted to stay Delulu. Honestly, in a weird, very twisted sense, you could say that maybe OP and their friend actually helped her out by exposing that their husband is more than happy to chat up and flirt with other women. But yeah, if they want to stay Delulu, good luck. Definitely not a battle you're gonna keep fighting for them. Folded Fireplace wrote, "It's from my observation that yelling and abusive managers are the ones who are trying to hide their incompetence behind aggression." Our next story is Say Goodbye to Your House and Your Retirement. This one is technically not my revenge, but some revenge I got to see up close and take joy from, and slightly participate in. The background is most of the story, so this will be a little long. I was in the Navy and stationed on the submarine base in Connecticut. I had a friend I met in boot camp, and we were in the same class for our A school, Navy job training. We'll call that friend Bill. Now, Bill wasn't the most physically fit guy. He was short, kind of chubby, and wore glasses. However, Bill was really smart, and as the sonar technician he was meant to be, he would have been amazing. He had a pragmatic way of looking at things I really valued in a friend, and I know it would have made him successful if he'd made it out to the fleet. While in school, we had a couple of petty officers that were hard butts. They somehow convinced themselves they were super soldiers, despite the fact that our jobs in the field are really nerd-centric. You get picked for that job because of your math and computer skills, not your deadlift number. Still, they were both all about being fit and working out all the time. We would do physical training 3 times a week, and while most of us could keep up, Bill often fell behind on runs, or didn't quite meet what these 2 idiots believed to be the standard. To be clear, Bill did pass the minimum requirements for fitness, he just didn't go as extreme as these guys. Side note for other Navy vets, he got the McPawn coin for how hard he pushed himself at PT the day he visited. The end result was that they would constantly berate and belittle Bill. They'd call him fat, lazy, and everything else. They'd tell him that he should end himself, you name it. They were always on his butt, despite him passing his assessments. At some point, Bill pushed himself too hard and injured his knee. He told these petty officers he was injured and had to be seen by the doc on base. The doc had put him on light duty so the knee could recover. He had the paperwork to back it up. They elected to ignore that and threatened him with kicking him out if he didn't do the workouts. So Bill kept pushing himself, injuring himself more, and his mental health degraded the whole time. In my time in the Navy, you didn't get mental health services, really. The only person to talk to like that was the chaplain. For those who don't know, the chaplain is the religious leader, usually a pastor, priest, or rabbi that has signed up as a commissioned officer. Our chaplain was the sweetest little woman you ever met, but as a chaplain, she held the rank of captain, high-ranking officer, so Bill set up a meeting with the chaplain to talk about things. When Bill informed the petty officers he would be missing class the next day for his chaplain meeting, they yelled at and berated him more. They called him a softie, useless, not fit for the Navy, and everything else you can imagine. They convinced Bill he was being weak and the chaplain wouldn't care about his issues, that nobody would care. They promised to make life even harder if he didn't show the next day, so he canceled his meeting. Evidently, bad luck hit, and that night his girlfriend was also breaking it off with him. She wasn't worth his time or money, but he couldn't see that. That night, I awoke to a 3 a.m. call from Bill. I couldn't hear anything, and I asked several times, "Bill, you there? Are you okay?" It wouldn't have been the first time that I got a drunk dial from one of my friends after a hard day like Bill had. Sailors have been known to drown their sorrows a bit. Eventually, I figured it was a butt dial or a drunk dial and hung up and went back to bed. I still regret that decision. The next day, all heck broke loose. Me and a couple other friends got calls from Bill's now ex-girlfriend informing us he was in the hospital because he injured his own throat. Turned out a few of us got that 3 a.m. call, but Bill couldn't speak at the time and was kind of out of it due to blood loss. We finished what we had to do on base and rushed over to the hospital. As we got there, the chaplain was on her way out and we passed her in the hallway. She spoke to us briefly to say that Bill would be okay and she wouldn't forget this. I have never seen a look on someone's face that so accurately depicted raw, unfiltered rage. It took us all by surprise because she was such a small, sweet, and personable lady, but the look in her eyes, you could just tell she wanted someone to pay for this. She wanted revenge, and we all knew she wore the kind of rank that could get it done. We visited Bill, who could barely talk, but he told us the story of what had happened, what he was thinking of at the time, and how glad he was it didn't work. Apparently, it was cold enough that the blood clotted on the outside of his neck and made kind of a patch that kept him alive long enough for the EMS to find him and get him to a hospital. The doctor said he missed his carotid by about a millimeter. A week went by and we hadn't heard anything until we got called in by the chief of the training command, the boss to these petty officers. He said he wanted to check on the rest of us and make sure there weren't any other issues with these guys he wasn't aware of and that we were all okay. I let him know about a butt chewing he gave me a few months back, that I was really set up by these guys and that they'd lied to him. My friends cited a couple other examples of their own, with these guys being generally crappy, dishonest people. I don't think it mattered. I think their fates were already sealed and we were being asked for more ammo to bury them with. The next day, they were nowhere to be found, and we were introduced to new instructors who would be taking over our training permanently. After class, I decided to stop by and ask the chaplain what happened. She told me she had never been more disgusted by the actions of a sailor than these two guys who convinced someone not to come see her. She teared up a bit, regretting that she didn't get the chance to help Bill before he made his attempt. In her mind, it was these two that precipitated and enabled Bill's attempt. So on to the revenge. The chaplain told me she went to the admiral in charge of the entire base and demanded their immediate discharge. He granted it. Both petty officers were immediately processed out with dishonorable discharges. I can't remember the exact charge I heard they cited for it, but I know the Navy has a way of selling BS on paper when they want a certain outcome, especially officers at that high level. So basically, they get no VA benefits of any kind, got kicked out of the base housing they lived in, and could probably only find work at a gas station or under the table stuff somewhere. Also, I know from someone else who got the boot that the Navy only pays for a single bus ticket to get you back home, not your family or any of your belongings. When you have a discharge like that, no company with Department of Defense contracts is allowed to hire you. That includes McDonald's because they have stores on bases throughout the country. Taco Bell, Subway, etc. None of them will give you a job. They can't, and they don't want to anyway. So I don't know where these guys went or what became of them, but I know their lives were irrevocably ruined. One of them had about 18 years in, so he was 2 years from retirement and lost it all. The other was at about 12 years, so he also lost a lot. Wherever they are now, I'd be very surprised to hear they're making more than minimum wage. As for Bill, well, he made a full recovery. He got a full medical discharge, which is an honorable discharge that meant E5 pay for the rest of his life, full benefits, and a referral to a counselor in his home state once he got back there. All paid for by the Navy. We lost touch over the years, but I did see on Facebook he got himself together, became a police officer, and got married. Well, obviously, the best thing here is that it didn't work out what Bill was trying to do that night. And bless that chaplain for stepping in and making sure something happens here. The way those guys acted, they deserved every bit of what happened to them. It's just knowing their behavior, maybe they try to capitalize on that and be these macho trainer guys. I was too good for the Navy, so I left. This login is for Reddit wrote, good on Bill, good on the chaplain, and as to the 2 petty officers, I expect the universe decided to keep kicking them just to remind them of what they'd done. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.